Now initially I'm going to apologize about the framing, because when I first looked through the camera and where I actually put my arm afterwards, completely different places. But essentially what I'm doing here is I'm using spirit gum to create a tacky surface on my skin, and then taking out some scar wax to roll into a sort of sausage shape, and I got a wrong amount initially, and I actually had too much to deal with afterwards in the end product, but it doesn't look too bad. I'm just reapplying some more spirit gum here because it wasn't sticky enough. I found it quite difficult to apply this. I didn't know why, whether it was you need to have it smoothed in more, or whether you need more kind of globular splodges for it to stick to. But either way, I eventually got it to a state where I could work it into my skin. And as you can see, it's very sticky. I ended up having to use a knife, here we go, to blend it in, because it stuck to my fingers so much that it just ruined the shape I wanted. But I began to blend it in here, and it started to look alright, and I was quite happy with my skin. It kind of looked the same shade regardless, and I don't know whether that's because the scar wax itself chips a bit so you can see some through, or whether it's not completely opaque. But my actor's arm is less so the colour, so I'll probably have to use some foundation to the colour of his skin, or possibly some makeup to do a similar effect. So here I'm beginning to create the cut wound, and as you see there, I took off a huge chunk and had to roll it up. So it's not the easiest material to work with, but with some practice it's not too much of an issue. And there's a bit of a close-up. And here I've got some yellowish kind of makeup to stimulate bruising. I think initially I did this wrong, because it looks far too old of a wound for what I'm going to have it to be. But I for some reason decided that I'd use it as a blender with my skin, so it looks a bit strange from here. But overall it doesn't look too bad at the end, so that's just something to keep in mind when I actually do it on set. And initially I had a really cheap bit of makeup stuff from the shop nearest to me, and I didn't find that to be very good. That's just my hands being sticky again. So what I've got here actually is some old model paint that I'm applying black into to make the wound look deep. Now initially it looks very almost cartoony that it's so dark, but eventually it does mold in with the reds that I use. This is one called Scar Red, so I'm blending that in slightly using the outside, and I have got the brush wet a little bit so that it blends easier with the other tones that I'm using. Trying to just stipulate some sort of cut along the outside. Unfortunately this was quite a good development, because I began to push out the wound a bit more, but once again my framing is awful. Here is some blood red, which is a significantly brighter colour, and again my framing is bad. But essentially what that did was it made the wound look fresher, with the combination of the yellow that I had used and the darker tones. It looked far too old, like it had been bruised for a while and possibly the blood was drying, which isn't exactly what I'm looking for, because in the scene it's a completely fresh wound. And so what I'm doing is I'm kind of making it a brighter colour as to oh, that was terrible, as to make it seem fresher. And again here I'm trying to bring up some lighter tones with this lighter red that you can see a little bit of my arm, and as you can see slightly the scar wax is beginning to tone in better with my arm. I don't know whether it's the heat that that makes it apply better, but it's definitely beginning to mold more. And here I'm using a sort of small spongy brush thing to make it more applied in an even matter across areas, because with the brush I found that I was just blobbing areas, which was quite good in a sense, but I wanted to bring out more in the overall effect of the wound. So I needed just more so it wasn't isolated to the one area where the cut was. So I put a bit around it, and here I'm just adding the blood at the end, which for me I think it makes it because it looks amazing. Now this probably isn't the area where I'm going to have it on my victim's arm, because actually if you were to have a cut there you'd be bleeding quite a lot, because that's where the artery is. However, for me it was just the least hairy place on my arm, so it wasn't too painful to take the scar wax off. So I may locate it elsewhere, but as you can see here, the blood oozing out is quite effective, and if it wasn't for the whole poor blending of my work, it would actually look quite realistic, and I like the tones, and I think I've taken a lot away from this test as to implicate in the actual production.